Mmm, come closer, dear. I have a special one for you tonight. This one is about a woman named Barbara. Barbara lived in a small town called Hallow Creek, the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where people leave their doors unlocked and wave to their neighbors and bring casseroles when someone is having a hard time. Barbara had lived there for 11 years. She had a house with a porch, a garden she was proud of, and a husband named Eddie. Eddie was a clown. Not just in the way that some husbands are clowns, dear. No, no. Eddie was a professional clown. Birthday parties, town fairs, school events. Everyone in Hallow Creek knew Eddie. Everyone loved Eddie. Everyone thought Barbara was the luckiest woman in town. Poor Barbara. Eddie had been performing for 20 years. White face paint, red smile painted wide across his cheeks, a bright yellow suit with oversized buttons. He was good at it, genuinely good. Children adored him. Parents trusted him. He had a warmth about him that made people feel safe. That was the thing about Eddie. He was very, very good at making people feel safe. Barbara had married him 9 years ago, and she had never once felt afraid of him. He was gentle at home, quiet. He cooked dinner on Sundays and fixed things around the house and always remembered her birthday. She thought she knew him completely. She did not know him at all. It started with the basement. Eddie had always kept it locked. His workshop, he said, his space. Barbara had never questioned it. Everyone is allowed a space of their own, she reasoned. She had never tried a door, never needed to. But one Tuesday afternoon, while Eddie was out on a job, Barbara was doing laundry and the basement door was open, just slightly, just an inch. She stood there with a pile of clothes in her arms and looked at that open door and thought, he must have forgotten to lock it. She should have walked away. She walked toward it instead. The stairs went down into darkness. A single bare bulb hung at the bottom, swinging slightly in a draft that had no business being there. The smell hit her first, something metallic and wrong that she could not name, but her body recognized immediately. She gripped the railing. One step, two. The light swung. Shadows moved across the walls, and for a moment Barbara saw shapes she could not make sense of. Things hanging, things laid flat, things arranged with a care that made her stomach turn. She reached the bottom step, and the light swung still. In the corner of the basement, hanging on a hook, was Eddie's clown suit, the yellow one, the one with the oversized buttons, the one she had seen him wear 100 times at 100 birthday parties while children laughed and parents clapped. It was soaked in blood, not a little, not a splash or a stain, soaked, dark and rust brown and dried in patches and still wet in others, as if it had been worn recently. As recently as last night when Eddie had said he was working a late party in the next town over. Barbara stood in the basement of her own home and looked at that costume and understood all the missing people. There had been 4 of them in the last 3 years. 4 people from in and around Hallow Creek who had simply vanished. The police had theories. The town had rumors. Nobody had looked at Eddie. Nobody had ever looked at Eddie. She backed up the stairs, one step at a time, slowly, silently, her hand pressed over her mouth to keep in the sound that was trying to come out of her. She reached the top. She pushed the basement door shut. She stood in her kitchen with the yellow curtains she had picked out herself and the coffee maker Eddie had bought her for Christmas, and she shook from head to foot and tried to think. Eddie would be home in 2 hours. 2 hours. She needed to move. She searched the house. She didn't know what she was looking for until she found it, sitting on top of Eddie's bedside drawer. A single folded note. Plain. Small. Her name written on the front in Eddie's neat, careful handwriting. The same handwriting she had seen on birthday cards and grocery lists for 9 years. Her hands shook so badly she almost couldn't pick it up. She stood there for a long time just looking at it. Then she opened it. 4 names, 4 dates, 4 locations outside of Hallow Creek where nobody would have thought to look. Written out like a list, like a record, like something Eddie had wanted her to find. She photographed it with her phone. Then she folded it back exactly as she found it and put it back on the drawer. She stood at the bedroom window and watched the driveway. Her mind was doing 2 things at once. The part of her that had loved Eddie for 9 years was still trying to find an explanation, still reaching for something reasonable, still saying there must be a mistake, there must be a reason, there must be something she was misunderstanding. And the part of her that had seen that costume was screaming at her to run. She listened to the parrot that was screaming. She picked up her phone. She called the sheriff, Tom Briggs. She had known him for 11 years. He had come to their house for dinner twice. He had shaken Eddie's hand at the town fair every summer. Her voice came out in a whisper so tight she barely recognized it. She told him about the basement, the costume, the notebook, the dates, and the initials and the locations. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Tom said, "Barbara, stay in the house. Do not let Eddie know you've been in the basement. We are on our way." 15 minutes, he said. She had 15 minutes. She was watching the driveway when the headlights appeared. Her phone screen glowed in her hand. Tom had said 15 minutes. It had been 8. Eddie's car turned into the drive. Barbara stepped back from the window into the shadow of the curtain and watched him park, watched him get out, watched him reach into the back seat for his bag, the big duffel bag he always brought to jobs, and sling it over his shoulder. He was whistling. She could hear it faintly through the glass, a children's song, something bright and cheerful that children clapped along to at birthday parties. Barbara pressed herself flat against the wall and did not breathe. She heard the front door open, his keys on the hook, his shoes on the mat. He always took his shoes off at the door, 9 years, every single time. The sound of the refrigerator opening, the clink of a bottle, ordinary sounds, the sounds of a husband coming home. Barbara stood at the top of the stairs and listened and did not make a single sound. Then, the basement door. She heard the handle, heard it stop, heard a pause that lasted 3 seconds too long. He had noticed it was shut. He always left it locked. And now it was simply shut, and he knew, she was certain he knew, that someone had been down there. The house went very quiet. He still had his makeup on. She saw it when she peered over the top of the staircase. Eddie standing at the bottom, looking up, the white face paint still on from his job, the red smile still painted wide across his cheeks, but his expression underneath it, his real expression, was not smiling at all. He looked up at her, and she looked down at him, and 9 years of marriage passed between them in a single second. He knew she knew. She knew he knew she knew. Barbara ran. She hit the front door at full sprint and threw it open and ran out into the street screaming. Hallow Creek at 9 in the evening, porch lights on, a neighbor walking a dog, old Mrs. Patterson in her front garden. Barbara ran into the middle of the street and screamed until every light on the block came on and every door opened and faces appeared, and she turned and pointed back at her house and said, "It's Eddie, it's Eddie. Call the police, it's Eddie." The sheriff arrived in 7 minutes, 4 cars, lights and sirens cutting through the quiet of Hallow Creek like something the town had never seen before and hoped never to see again. They found the basement. They found everything in the basement. And they found Eddie sitting calmly at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, still in his white face paint and his red painted smile, waiting for them as if he had known this moment was always coming and had simply been waiting for it to arrive. He didn't run. He did not fight. He just smiled that painted smile. Barbara stood on the sidewalk wrapped in a neighbor's blanket and watched them lead her husband out of the house in handcuffs, and she felt, not relief, not yet, just the strange hollow feeling of a life cracking open and everything she thought she knew falling out of it. 9 years. He had been doing this for 9 years, right beside her, every morning, every dinner, every Sunday when he cooked and every birthday he remembered, right beside her. And that, dear, is where we leave Barbara, on the sidewalk, in the cold, alive. She got out. Not everyone does. But Barbara, practical, quiet, brave Barbara, she listened to the part of herself that was screaming, and that made all the difference. "I'll be right here when you come back, in my chair, where I always am."